Dearest Mother, it's been 3 days now since we left Norfolk on our journey west to the hills of Barrington, to Mount Rogers, and then into Bristol. It's cold out here, Mother. The natives have not received us kindly. We've seen several on our 4-day journey. One raised his hand in a mockery of the white man's hello. We scared him off with muskets. But I don't understand the aggression. Why do they hate us, Mother? Why do they... Oh, shit. There's one right now.
Hey, get the fuck out of here! Take your fucking headbands, your fucking feathers! This is our land now! Alright, go! The other side of the river, you fuck! Go! Go!
Why do they hate us, Mother? We've brought them so much. Art, literature, lively jigs on the piano. And all they offer us is corn. Perhaps one day after we've tamed this savage land, we can take them under our wing and teach them that they too can be almost as good as the white man. And we'll take their history and omit it. We'll omit everything with Patrick Wall.
Yay! Gross.
I kind of feel like no yay for that one. It's like...
Oh, it was hard to yay to that one.
I want to be very clear that I am not... I'm playing a character there. His name's Thackeray. Thackeray Binks.
Birthaniel.
And that guy's a piece of shit. In the story, in my like the head canon, they call it.
He definitely dies of dysentery.
He poops into a river and then he slips on like a wet rock and falls headfirst into his own dysentery water and then drowns in it.
Birthaniel sounds like an American hero, frontiersman. Hey,
bumbling idiot like the rest of them.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for being here on Delete Everything Podcast. I'm Patrick Wall, and riding shotgun here with me is my co-host,
Riley Bowen.
We are happy to have everyone here while we talk about westward expansion in the 1800s. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone to please get on Apple Podcasts, get on Spotify, give us 5 stars. That's going to be how we get some visibility and make it onto more people's suggested podcasts. So it also just makes us more enticing to advertisers, which is, you know, how we end up making a buck or two. So I know I keep saying it. I kind of got to just keep saying it because we love you guys and we're just trying to see if you love us back. That's it. We just want to know if we're in a toxic relationship. So if you
I love you on an individual basis.
Yeah, exactly. So if you love us half as much as we love you, please just tap those 3 little dots on the top of your screen if you're on Spotify or Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Give us 3 stars, leave us a review. You can tell us anything you'd like. We're mostly just in it for the 5 stars. So tell us, you know what? Tell us what the first episode you listened to was and why you were disappointed in it and why you are personally disappointed in us as human beings.
Speaking of us disappointing you, I have a small disclaimer for this episode.
Sure.
I was going to do some groundwork on this one, and I wanted to, like, my big plan was to, as we talk about the westward expansion, specifically of like the colonials in like this part of the North American continent, I wanted to have like a perspective from the native side because I think that's like obviously not an untapped history.
We're doing it.
Yeah, but
I got it, baby.
Hear me out here. Okay. What I wanted to do was like specifically have anecdotal evidence from the native side. I actually reached out to a friend of mine.
That's right. You told me about that.
That has lived on several reservations and is a member of multiple different families.
Tribes.
And the consensus that I got from them was pretty much like if you're going to talk from the perspective of the natives, you need to contact that tribe and not just like get their permission, but also like get their version of the history.
Sure.
You know, because a lot of the resources that you find online are really specifically like burnt,
Cheyenne
truncated. It's just very truncated history and from the perspective of colonial America for the most part. So
for sure.
the real good juice in the history of the people that lived here before colonialism is with them. And
well, listen, we're going to tackle a lot of this from the native perspective, and we're going to go ahead and insert our own, hey, that's fucked ups. We're gonna put our own into that. So, but anyway, welcome back to Delete Everything Podcast. This is Riley and I's little, tiny little gold mine that we bought, and we meet at it weekly to delve into obscure histories and forgotten histories and deleted histories. And, we find the Balrogs that live deep in the tunnels of our collective memories. Yeah, I did that. We get together and we try and surface some of these little gold nuggets.
I thought you were going to say, like, the coal that is in this mine, not gold.
No. We get together every week and we pan for these little gold nuggets to fill in the blanks that people don't know or have forgotten about. And, we make some off-color jokes in the process. So we are basically a history podcast disguised as a comedy podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. We're like when you get to a gold town, right? And you set up this little gold town, right? And you get there and you're like, oh, I'm going to get some gold. And so you buy a little piece of land, you buy your own little gold, your gold.
Like a
plot. Yeah. And then you realize there's nothing but silver in there. So you're kind of disappointed. But the good news is there's a tavern with a brothel in the town, right? So so the gold is the comedy, which you're disappointed in because it's silver at best.
I'm more disappointed in that rambling incoherence.
And then you go to the tavern with the brothel and you're real excited, except for instead of hookers, it's full of, history professors. It's just a bunch of history.
This is starting off great, Patrick.
My metaphors are, I'm stretched. I'm stretched to the limit trying to come up with one of these every week.
It's okay. You know what? I'm actually in a fucking terrible mood today, so this is fine.
Oh, I was so... we'll get into this after I say these words.
After these messages.
After these messages. If you want to send us some messages, whether they be love notes or hate mail or both.
Nudes.
Or nudes, you can hit us up at deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com. We've also got some social media. We've got some other ways to support us, and we'll plug all that stuff at the end of the show. So you want to hitch up the wagons and head west, baby?
Yeah.
You can say no. You can just get up and walk out.
Yeah, I guess I do live in a spectrum of existence where I can make my own choices.
Yeah, you can. Hey, Riley.
Huh?
Do you want to hitch up the wagons and head west?
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah, that's what I want to hear. So... by the end of this series, by the way, we are going to ruin every concept of the Wild West that's ever been fed to us by movies and TV shows and video games.
I'm actually super excited about it because one of you ever watch a movie that it's like, this is the real gritty history of this shit? Or
it's not really though. It's not really though. And the reason why I'm saying that we're going to ruin it is because it didn't take long before, we rail against sort of corporatization and corporate culture in this country quite frequently on this show, and it's not going to take long into this before you go, oh, so this is we've got a long time, we've got decades, century plus of history on the people with tons of money going, hey, how do I exploit those people? And
and that starts even in the old country, people didn't just fucking show up on the shore with nothing.
No, that starts with industrialization, which was before we had, it wasn't before we had this established as a colony, but it was before the Revolutionary War and all that stuff. Industrialization in the 1700s is basically where the people who were rich got richer and the people who lived in abject poverty fucking died in piss and dirt. And that was just, that's where it started. And before that, it was the monarchy and, the people who were poor, you could either be a soldier and, make a little bit of money till you fucking got skewered, or you could just,
then died in piss and dirt. It's pretty much piss and dirt. Yeah. You got either,
or you could till fields of potatoes until you died in piss and dirt.
So, yeah. Pretty much piss and dirt is
unless you were, unless you're born privileged, you die in piss and dirt, regardless of which fucking which
And
path you
if
take.
if you're really rich and privileged, and one day you're taking a nice stroll, and then you have a heart attack and you fall down, and you're like, oh, piss and dirt.
Piss and dirt.
No.
So yeah, basically the path in the woods can diverge into how many ever fucking ways it wants.
I believe I'll take the path less trodden by.
Well, and piss and dirt's at the end of that one too. So, this is a topic that we've been wanting to do for a while now, and we knew that it would be one of the more daunting episodes because there's just so many ways to approach the topic. There's there's the manifest destiny angle, there's the impact to the natives, which was enormous.
Yeah, I actually I just want to complete my little disclaimer at the beginning.
Go ahead.
I'm super intrigued by the idea that, like, if you really want to respectfully give the history of the natives, then you just fucking talk to them. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna do that. Like,
you should.
I'm already planning like a series coming up in the future. I don't know, maybe we'll do it on Patreon.
Yeah,
but
probably.
like I'll call the historical societies on the reservations.
Let's go there
and get some. Yeah, well, I can go. We'll fucking interview people and do that. That sounds cool as shit to me.
Let's go there. Hey, that costs money, and if you guys love us and you want to support us, then the way to do that is
pandering fuck.
Get on Patreon.
He's not lying though. We are broker than shit.
But you like to say that, and I like to say we're okay.
Yeah,
but we're not.
Speak for yourself. But I just labored in the rain. I signed up.
You
for
also
health
just
insurance
bought your
today.
mother a car, so that's.
I'm still paying it off.
Yeah, yeah. That's sweet Riley, beautiful little butterbean that he is, bought his elderly mother a vehicle 2 weeks ago, and like
it's just to shut her up. It's not like I'm a nice guy.
And we still get together weekly and do this. So, but yeah, so there are so many ways to approach this. Like I said, there's the manifest destiny, there's the Native Americans, there's the gold rush in the mining industry, and just industrialization in general. The population boom and the agricultural industry. There's the Homestead Act, the Transcontinental Railway. There's all these things, the Black and Chinese labor force and sort of their treatment on the frontier. There are just so many things.
He means slaves, if anyone was wondering what that meant.
Well, no, even post Civil War, there were a lot of blacks that went west because of Jim Crow and because that was sort of
yes, that's actually
ungoverned land.
That's well documented in any Western that was made in like the 90s that wanted to be progressive.
Yeah. So I mean, there were a lot of former slaves after the Civil War that went out west, and a lot of them made names for themselves, and we'll get into that. But that's just like a few of the important factors that are all sort of that all are interconnected in this. And I mean, that's literally what I mean. Like, I just rattled off 5 or 6 things, and that's like the tip of the iceberg. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. That's like a fucking snowflake perched on the highest peak of the iceberg. Literally.
Yeah,
like,
there's been a lot of
so much.
This country, the country itself since colonialism has only been around for. I mean, we live in St. Augustine, Florida, so like the first like real European colony. Well, debatably, was on these shores.
The first.
This is the
continuously
we say it all the
occupied European settlement in the contiguous United States.
Yeah,
of America.
the Spanish, debatably again, landed here in 1565, which is almost 200 years before British colonialism.
By the way, I will say, because we say it all the time, there is one other colony that's part of the United States that has been occupied longer than us. No, it's San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Yes.
San Juan outdates St. Augustine. It has been continuously occupied for longer than St. Augustine.
San Juan and St. Augustine both have big Spanish forts that actually match pretty well.
San Juan's bigger.
Yeah.
San Juan is bigger.
Yeah, San Juan's bigger,
but it's fucking enormous. But
the one here ain't no slouch either. It's fucking pretty impressive.
No. The one in San Juan, you can see where they were sort of modeled from the same sort of architectural drawings or whatever. It was the same concept.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously a 4-cornered defense. It's a fort. It's
San Juan is just bigger.
But when I was growing up in Michigan, I had no idea that the first Europeans landed in Florida because well, like where I think we
in the Caribbean, but as far as once they came to the continental North American
I think we've mentioned this before, like the different forms of colonialism in different corners of the United States is kind of vast. Like, in Michigan, you've got a lot more French colonial settlement stuff. You get into New England, obviously, it's more British. Go further south, it's more Spanish. But yeah, having a British-centric history upbringing growing up in Michigan in the 90s was like, you had Jamestown. You knew Plymouth Rock, fucking Jamestown.
Jamestown is weird because everybody just disappeared.
That wasn't Jamestown.
Yeah.
No, that was the fucking Roanoke.
That wasn't Jamestown?
No, that was Roanoke.
Okay.
The lost colony at Roanoke.
All right, well, maybe I'm an idiot.
Fucking idiot.
Yeah, that's true.
Jamestown's the one with the corn.
Sure. So, obviously, all this being said, couple of things. One, this is a very historically heavy topic, and it's tough to make funny. So bear with us because there will be the normal amount of jokes, I think.
You didn't even ask why I'm having a bad day.
Riley, why are you having a bad day?
I got made fun of on the internet.
Well, honestly, that's just on you for letting it affect your day.
I got in some debate with some dickhead. And
that's why you don't do that.
He said some shit that was like, you come up with better argument if you're going to talk when the adults are talking. And at this exact same time he said that, I was signing my teenage daughter up for a second year on my dental plan. And I'm like, adult? I'm a fucking adult.
Listen, the internet is the way that people get away with saying things without getting punched in the mouth. Yeah. So, I yearn for a time when people would say that shit out loud and then get punched in the mouth. At any rate, couple of things. One, this is historically real fucking heavy shit. So we'll make jokes and we'll make it funny to the best of our abilities. Two, this is going to be our first 2 and maybe 3-parter consecutively, right? So next week will be part 2. If the subject matter necessitates, we may have a part 3 that'll come out on Thanksgiving week. By the way, this is coming out on Veterans Day. We sort of planned this because we wanted to say like, hey, happy Veterans Day.
We wanted to ignore veterans completely.
No. A lot of this, a lot of the people that we get into are all veterans. Daniel Boone, veteran of the Revolutionary War. Same with Meriwether Lewis and Lewis and Clark. Both of those guys. What was Clark? William Clark. William Clark. These are all veterans. Like a lot of the people who had the testicular fortitude to go west were all ex-military guys. These are all guys that said, you know what? I will weather the natives and the elements and the unknowns.
Fucking cryptids, bears.
To get the fuck out of, Philadelphia because there's too many fucking people here and go make it on my own. So that's why this was sort of a Veterans Day, and it may extend all the way to Thanksgiving. I don't know if we'll get all this done in 2 weeks, honestly, in 2 episodes.
When you think of the initial Western expansion, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, like I said at the top, based on what we see in all these TV shows, movies, video games, books, all these things is like these big rough and tumble guys, the men of the West that went out and just sort of, went out and to manifest destiny and did their thing and said, this is my shit. I'm going to make. And by the way, as someone who's like obsessed with the idea of homesteading, of having like my own little piece of land and fucking, I don't have a large piece of land, but I grow vegetables and I make my own shit. Allison makes bread. I fucking I pickle my own vegetables.
The way that you said that made it sound like you grew the vegetables in your own shit. I grow vegetables. I make my own shit.
Spoiler alert. Jesus. But no, like I literally, like I'm making mustard for the first time, like currently, like as we speak, there's mustard that's being made, which you'll get some of.
Oh, lovely.
Also, I have a loaf of bread in the truck if you want some.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, you want a loaf of It's Parmesan garlic focaccia.
Oh, fantastic.
It's fucking delicious.
Oh, lovely.
All right. So that's sort of what I wanted to hit before we get into before we get into this, I do want to rattle off a couple of shout outs. So,
wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't you want to know what I think of first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think of how fucking scary the woods are.
No,
that's
really
when I think of like pushing west. Can you imagine being like,
Yes.
like, okay, great, colonials, essentially bad, get it, but think of like being like you've got your family and you've heard like, yeah, there's like a settlement out that way, but it's like 700 miles of fucking rough trail and there's bears and shit.
See, the bears don't bother me.
As far
I think
as-
if you omit specifically native tribes that were not amenable to people being on their lands, what they viewed as their hunting grounds and stuff like that. I think if you omit that, because there were also friendly native tribes.
Yeah, they're just big. Oh, just passing through. Cool.
Yeah. There were tribes that were like, hey, how's it going? Like, how can we help you keep getting the fuck out of here? You know, keep going that way.
Yeah, keep on going.
But there were also tribes that were very, very much like, you are on our hunting grounds. You have your fuck. Even if you were just passing through and just pitching tents for the night, they were like, no, fuck you. We're stealing your horses. We're fucking killing everybody that we can.
Yep.
And we're getting the fuck out before you can kill any of our guys, because settlers had muskets and flintlock pistols and shit like that.
Yep.
So, but I honestly, if you omit those things like fucking bears and mountain lions and shit like that,
I think
it doesn't scare me.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying here.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new woods to you, undocumented. Like, yeah, okay, like you might have like, yeah, sure, you get like various kinds of plants and stuff. Blah, blah, blah. If you're going into undocumented woods in a place that is, I mean, as far as you know, magic, you're fucking afraid of like ogres and shit and giant spiders and like fucking, it's like walking into the fucking forbidden woods in a fairyland. Like, that's fucking scary. That's the way that it is in my head, thinking about going into untapped nature on a new continent.
I camped for 5 nights in like deep into fucking Denali State Forest in Alaska. Like, there's not anything out there. There was like a latrine that I had to walk to.
Yeah, but
for a while.
That's
pretty untapped wilderness.
Yeah, but if it was legitimately untapped wilderness that you never knew anybody who'd gone in there, like it's brand new woods, like you wouldn't know what the fuck you were gonna come across.
Sure, I guess, but you
were in a cabin.
You're asking me. No, I wasn't. I was in a fucking 2-person tent.
Oh, stupid.
I was in a legit 2-person tent.
Could have been killed by a moose. Are you out of your fucking mind?
Could have been.
You imagine seeing a moose for the first time?
I had already seen a moose for the first time.
But I mean, like, ever. Like, you had no idea what a moose was.
But you asked me
creature.
as 43-year-old Patrick, who has lived a lifetime and learned some things and stuff like that. No, if I was potentially a not fantastically educated settler at the the
I'd be like, oh, that's
probably
that's
fucking wild.
God of the forest. I gotta get
Probably
the fuck out of here. Yeah.
Why is that thing so big?
That's the biggest animal I've ever seen. I need to leave the woods forever. I'll be a fisherman.
I do want
and
to...
that's the story of Maine. That's it right there.
I do want to shout out a few of my sources. Obviously, I do a solid amount of research on these in general, but the research for this series was like so in depth that I do want to give credit where credit's due. And this is just a few. This is like not everybody, so I'm sorry if I skip over you. I doubt you'll be able to hit me for plagiarism because, like I said, I've put everything in my own words, even where I take things from sources. But author John Green, phenomenal. Simple History, which is a YouTube channel. Same with This Is History.
Yeah, big social media presence on that guy too.
Yeah, John Green. Smithsonian Magazine, Khan Academy. Frederick Paxson's book, History of the American Frontier, which is an absolute fucking masterpiece. It's a bit of a dry read, but it's great. And like I said, that's just like a drop in the bucket on source material. So I did make this episode my own, but I did rely heavily on a lot of smarter people than me. You know, certainly on this subject, probably on almost all subjects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right over here. Yeah.
Okay. So
I want to thank some of my sources. I want to thank
me,
Daniel Day-Lewis from the movie Last of the Mohicans. I want to thank Kevin Costner for his recent release of the movie Horizon.
We're starting all the way with the end of the Revolutionary War. So you may want to thank Mel Gibson and the Patriot.
Not ever going to thank Mel Gibson.
Say thank you, Mel Gibson.
No.
Say it out loud.
I absolutely
want to hear you say
I will not.
Thank you, Melvin Gibson.
I'm not going to do that. I won't. I will say that I appreciate the movie The Patriot, and Braveheart is my favorite movie. But I'm not gonna.
So what I'm hearing is Riley loves Mel Gibson and agrees
God
with all
damn
of his political stances.
I
so.
will say I loved Mel Gibson before 2007, 8,
Whenever he went,
whenever that
he
happened.
went bananas over juice. All right, so here we go.
Around Apocalypto, I think he started falling off, but that's a pretty good movie.
Apocalypto was fucking brutal, but
It's pretty good.
I don't know how
Pretty good flick.
historically accurate it is. Maybe that's an episode.
That actually is interesting. I know a little bit of Apocalypto. One thing that I do know about Apocalypto is that it is still one of the only movies that is told completely from the perspective of natives before colonialism.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that was all Incans, right?
Yep.
That was the Incans, right? Okay. Are you ready to jump into the westward expansion? Because we've gotten all the things out, and we are honestly starting with American independence. That's where this kind of starts. The end of the American Revolution, right? The Revolutionary War, September 3rd, 1783.
If any of you don't know, the American colonies separated from the colonialist overlords of Britain through a violent and bloody overthrow.
Which ended on September 3rd, 1783.
It's referred to as the American Revolution.
So with independence and a government in formation,
Comes
right,
great responsibility.
a lot of people began to immediately immigrate from Europe, right?
Well, yeah.
It was already ongoing before, but there was
but you
there
gotta-
was a rush.
You
right?
think about that time, and it's like at first it was like, hey, the king says that you can come over here and you get a sheep and your own land, and then once the king got the boot, everyone was like, oh fuck, you could just take whatever you want.
So and you have to look at it this way, right? It wasn't like there was any penalty for anybody, and we sort of think England primarily, but I mean, it was all over Europe. But even people in England, the end of the war was a treaty signed by the English saying, okay, fine, it's yours.
Just
right?
fucking take it. We don't even give a
Yeah.
shit.
It cost us too much. Just
We
fucking
got
take
other
it.
stuff going on.
Right.
Really a fucking dumb business decision on their part. They really should have kept fighting.
Well, we can keep going with Louisiana Purchase,
Yeah, right,
and
yeah.
like we've got a lot. So, but immigration really sort of pops at that point. I mean, literally from 1800, so 17 years after independence, to 1860, right? 60 years, the population increased by a third each decade. That was due to higher than normal birth rates, immigration, like I said, demand for slaves. So in that time, the population went from like 6 million in 1800 to 31.5 million in 1860. Think about that. Over 60 years, we went almost quintupled the population in the U.S.
And was it the 3/5 3/5 of those people?
Stop. We did quintuple, by the way. It wasn't almost. We did. So obviously, as those population numbers increased in sort of urban cities, the New Yorks, the Pennsylvanias, the fucking, I don't know.
Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Sure. Pigeon Forge wasn't. Well, Pigeon Forge by 1860 was. But all those urban cities became crowded, and that's a quote unquote, because then to now is like night and day. But
Well, yeah, but if you think of like the crowding then, it was literally a matter of like resources, because
Yeah.
those cities weren't like dealing with big trade route things. You can't ship shit.
there
through,
also weren't
like,
high rises. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but like think that exactly in that context, without high rises, it's just spread out over more of an area. You can't ship massive amounts of supplies over dirt roads a good portion of the year. So even in the 13 colonies, like if you go up to New England, like I drove from Connecticut to Massachusetts to fucking New Hampshire in a couple of hours when I was up there.
Right.
It would have taken the better part of like a month to make that trip before, just because it's fucking mountainous as shit. There's a lot of forest, yada yada yada. So when a city starts over like exceeding its population, they start eating everything that's in the area, and you can't feed everyone.
Well, and by the way, at this point, we're still getting pretty much all of our stuff that we need to live from Europe.
Yeah,
Everything's being shipped over.
It's coming
right?
from the east.
Right. So obviously, as these populations increase and the urban cities get more and more crowded, the government saw the necessity to open up some new territories and incentivize people to go there, right? That was the big thing, is like, okay, we're going to open up this territory, and how do we make people want to go there beyond just, hey, it's not so crowded there.
Right. Well, you can think like, there's too much shit in this city.
Yeah.
Literally, we need, a quarter of this population to move someplace else,
Right,
so they can poop there.
and that is literally what this whole episode grapples with, starting from the Revolutionary War all the way through the 1800s. So in 1783, the U.S. map was basically the states along the eastern seaboard all the way down to Georgia, right? And by 1800, so again, 17 years later, we've added Kentucky and Tennessee as states. By the way, in no small part thanks to Daniel Boone, who we'll talk about in a little bit here. But actually, let's just talk about, we could skip some little things here. It's just little.
I'm actually curious because
shit.
I know the name. I know he's a mountain man.
Daniel Boone?
That's all I know.
Okay. Well, so okay, let's jump into him.
You wish.
So let's get into Daniel Boone. So Daniel Boone was born in Pennsylvania. He was a Quaker. He was born to a Quaker family, but they weren't like super religious, blah, blah, blah.
They eat a lot of oats.
So, yeah. So after he got married and started having kids and stuff, he moved his family from Pennsylvania. I mean, I would imagine just because he knew the guy, right?
What?
That was a shit joke. Think about this.
Huh.
You live in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
which is named after William Penn.
Okay. So he knew the guy.
I mean, no, William Penn was already dead by this point.
Okay.
But I mean, but he probably had like elderly children, probably like grandchildren who were like
Just walking
Daniel
around.
Boone's like contemporaries, and you have a whole state named after, like, you go to school with some guy who's like, yeah, state's named after my grandpa.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Fucking Carl
Yeah.
Penn is such a douchebag. I can't wait to get the fuck out of here.
Every time his fucking cart gets pulled over, he's like, do you know who my grandfather was? Yeah. But so he
I want to go someplace I can fuck.
He-
Like Virginia.
he moves
Think
from
about that joke.
Yeah, gross. Or maybe hot. I don't know which. I was not alive in 1800. So he moves his family from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, and he was just so he didn't really get like a lot of formal education. Honestly, he spent most of his time out in the wilderness hunting as a child, like encouraged by his parents. Like, who cares? You don't need that book learning. Like, go catch us a coon, boy. So
You gotta eat.
Ooh, that, you know what? I want to just go ahead and say I meant raccoon. Again, I'm thinking about the times
Move
that
past
could
it, just
that
move
could have
past it,
that could have
move
been
past
two
it.
things. Raccoon, go
Everyone,
catch us
everyone
a
fucking knew you were
a
saying
deer.
raccoon.
Go catch us a deer.
Deer.
I'm just gonna.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Pause.
reinsert. Go and catch us a deer, boy. So, so he moved his family to North Carolina, and he sort of started exploring westward into and like beyond the Appalachian Mountain Range. Right, Appalachians were part of U.S. territory, but everything west of the Appalachians was sort of sparsely like colonized.
Well,
right?
that's kind of one of the charms of the Appalachians
right.
is that like that
even
was
to this day,
that was
like
the-
drive through West
yeah.
Virginia.
it was the natural barrier
Yeah.
that kept people passing further west. As the Cumberland Gap was like a big one.
And
yeah.
he was actually one of the people. He didn't find the Cumberland Gap, but he built. Well, let me get there. Right. So,
Yeah, but just to throw it down there, the first real natural barrier that you run across when you're trying to move west from the coast of the Americas is the Appalachian Mountain Range, which goes all the way up to Maine, the Green Mountains through Vermont, and then all the way down to,
all the way down
Georgia,
to Georgia,
northern
yeah.
Georgia. Yeah.
So this is, by the way, pre-Revolutionary War. This is like all in the 1760s, right? So he's, in like 1769, he's exploring sort of that
Nice.
whole western Appalachian range in modern day North Carolina, right? So once he got in there, and again, it was a lot. There wasn't really anybody out there other than natives.
I do love the idea of the exploring because really that he's just dicking around out there.
Yeah, he's just walking around the woods like everybody, like you have done, like I have done, like growing up, is just walking around the woods, which is awesome. And it's the best. Like, I wish I had the time now as an adult to walk around in the woods like I did when I was a kid.
I do think about like when somebody's not actively like pushing west and like fucking we're gonna map this. Like when somebody's when they're just like spending their time exploring an area. Like I picture this Daniel Boone.
That was Daniel Boone. That was Daniel Boone.
I picture
very
him
much.
just like walking around going, "Oh, that's a fucking cool tree."
Yeah. Oh, this is a new trail. Let me go down and see where this ends. Right. So, and that was very much Daniel Boone. So once he got out there, he found that like, unlike the very densely populated eastern seaboard, the whole Appalachian area had like a ton of game and open fertile land and all these things. He spent 2 years out there away from his family exploring and just sort of like not formally mapping these trails out, but I mean, maybe he did a little bit of that.
What was
but
his
I mean,
family
he was
doing?
Fucking at some point, I don't know if that was during these years, but at some point he came back after
Comes
being
back
away
after a
for a
couple
long
years.
time.
Like, I got a deer.
At some point he
Daddy
came
came back with the cigarettes finally.
No, for real though. At some point he came back after being, I don't think it was on this run, but at some point he came back after being away for a long time, and his wife had fathered another child with his brother.
No, he's been gone for 2 years.
I think it was even longer than 2 years, but he didn't even get mad. He raised the daughter like his own. He was like,
I get
it. You thought I was dead. There's fucking natives out there that aren't always so fucking amenable to people like chilling on their land.
Wonder why.
He could, by the way, he had a son who was killed by Indians. So, natives, sorry. So eventually in 1775, right? Mm-hmm. So about the time that the Revolutionary War is kicking off, he led a road crew to create the Wilderness Road, right? It's called the Wilderness Road. That actually goes through the Cumberland Gap from Virginia to central Kentucky. And that was he was the one who was the foreman for all this shit, building this road from Virginia to Kentucky, right? This is before Kentucky. Kentucky's still a settlement. It's not a state yet. So again, you have to look at all this in sort of this light of this is not completely, but mostly unexplored wilderness. And there are native tribes everywhere, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like my head immediately goes to like when they start doing this wilderness trail, the natives going, hey, what the fuck are you doing?
Right. And the further west you go, the more there are, because I started this at the Revolutionary War, but understand that there have been European settlers here for 200 plus years, since like from when we originally got here to late 17, early 1800s. There have been people for over 2 centuries.
Yeah.
So a lot of the natives, after, a ton of fighting and trying to sort of keep their lands, just said, you know what, fuck it, there's a lot that direction, let's just move there.
Just fucking ship it on down the line, will you, Jack?
There's shit out there, right? So,
you get past these mountains, a lot of flat land. I know you whiteys love the fucking flat land out there, right? Should take some of that shit.
So after the Revolutionary War, that route became sort of the main route for early settlers moving westward, still on this side of the Mississippi, but moving west into modern Kentucky, Tennessee, which becomes states pretty quickly after the Revolutionary War. Daniel Boone eventually moved his family out to Kentucky, and he established a settlement called Boonesboro because,
why not? You can name it after yourself.
Just right on the nose, huh?
I'd have called it Rileyton.
Patrickville.
There you go.
I love it.
Patrick's Fjord.
There would have probably been some Latino name. There'd be a very Brazilian festive party.
Patrick's Taco.
Name. Yeah. Rio de Patrick. So Rio de Patricio. Vamos.
The most happening tequila bar in the West.
But I mean, I will say that's pretty much all I have on Daniel Boone. He is worth a deep dive, honestly. He's a pretty wild figure. I mean, we know him sort of as this like American folk hero, frontiersman.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
he was a militia officer during the war.
To me, he's a guy whose name is on some shit. You know, like
Yeah,
I don't fucking know jack about.
I mean,
I know more about Timoth Montbrun, the French Canadian fur trapper that founded Memphis, Tennessee, than I know about Daniel.
I swear to fuck, I thought you were going to say Timothy Chalamet.
I know more about Timothy Chalamet than I do about Timoth Montbrun.
I mean, his life after Boonesboro was pretty, like, after the war, after Boonesboro, everything, because he founded Boonesboro during the war, but before the end of the war. But he ended up going broke because he bought up, or he plotted out huge swaths of land in Kentucky, and he was kind of a shit land speculator.
Yeah, because he was a fucking walk around the woods guy. He didn't know shit about fuck.
Well, he bought these huge, he plotted out these huge, like, he was trying to sell giant acreages in Kentucky that just were not very desirable.
I just want to make it clear that the heroes of this nation, for the most part, are just idiot hillbillies walking around fucking barefoot in the woods going, duh.
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson being probably the archetypal fucking...
What?
He said the archetypical, I think is the right
archetype.
word.
I think it's archetypal. Archetypical.
The archetype of, like, the more educated.
Oh, yeah, the fancy lad.
He was born in England. He was well educated. And
breeches and my shoes have buckles.
Right. We'll get into Jefferson.
Yeah, but like the real heroes, Daniel Boone, fucking Davy Crockett, shit like that.
Well,
like,
those are the frontiersmen. These are these
tough guys,
rough and tumble.
And I will say Davy Crockett. I don't know if you got a bit on him, but he became like a senator or
not yet in this episode. Yeah, but he's next episode.
Yes. He's become a man of letters over time, but like. The real
Davy Crockett.
Nobody wrote a fucking TV show about his exploits as a senator.
Well, and same with Daniel Boone's later life. He sort of all this property he was trying to sell in Kentucky caused a lot of legal issues, caused him to go broke. He ended up having to sell everything just to pay for legal fees and stuff.
What does he care? He's a walk around the woods guy.
And he ended up moving his family out to Missouri.
Sell the family, get back in the woods.
He sold all of his lands to pay legal fees. There was a point where there was a warrant out for his arrest, and he ran
Killed the lawman.
No, he ran from the law. He ran from the law. He tried to get an additional contract to widen the Wilderness Road.
That's just greedy.
As a wagon. Well, because the Wilderness Road was not equipped for wagons.
Ah, I see.
So he went to the government and said, hey, I'd like to get a contract to widen the road for wagons to come through so we get more. Again, he had a dog in the fight because he had land he was trying to sell in Kentucky, but they told him no, and they ended up giving the contract to someone else.
Ooh.
Yeah. So... That's
because
Daniel
the first time we hired you made a shitty little walking path, dickhead.
Anybody could just make a trail in the woods, you dick.
You pissed off all the natives?
Yeah, you had a fucking machete and some fucking kerosene, dude. You're good.
I do want to say that I think it's fun. I guess fun. That, if you were just like a tough guy during the Westward expansion, you just start a town. This is a town now.
Yeah.
First it was a house. Now it's a town.
There's going to be some of that too coming down the pike.
And I'm powering it with Oregon.
But that's Daniel Boone in a nutshell. Again, like with any of our episodes, this is very broad strokes, especially because there's so much in this episode.
And I'm specifically not commenting on the native perspectives for the most part, out of respect. I'm being very, because so much of this I want to be like, and let's dig into how the natives felt about this. But that is not my place, but I'm going to fucking revisit
There's a lot that we're going to revisit on that. There's a lot that we're going to revisit on. Remember that there are people here, like Europeans here and natives here. This is not a new thing, right?
Like, I can
it's just a population boom.
I can
it's
say
a
this
move.
at least.
It's a huge move, right?
In this perspective, and
it's not one or two families. It's fucking 100 families.
Even in contemporary America, I think it's safe to say the majority of your average listener, history enthusiast, when you think of like the natives in the American areas, you think living in teepees and wigwams and fucking buckskin clothes and stuff like that, but it's like such a wildly more varied experience than that. You think about the size of this fucking country.
Yeah.
You're talking about completely separate cultures in many respects.
For sure.
Like, I mean, fucking, if you think about like how far
think
it is.
about how many people emigrated from how many European countries. I mean, it wasn't all, again, it wasn't all Englishmen.
Well, let's just think about.
It was English. It was French.
It's closer from.
Not only that, by the way, the French have a huge territory west of the Mississippi.
Yeah,
still.
yeah, absolutely.
You know, we haven't gotten to Louisiana Purchase. We had like.
But I just want to put out there, like, if you think about like the native like cultures out there, the difference in Italy to Greece is less than the difference from Florida to Texas. Okay, like, so think of like the wildly. It is.
You don't want to go like Florida to, I don't know, like Maryland.
Sure, yeah, whatever. But if you think about like
Florida, Texas,
just
they have a lot of things in common.
No, I'm saying distance wise.
Oh, sure.
Right, like it's
the distance between Italy to Greece is
It's like it's negligible compared to that kind of shit.
Absolutely.
But the cultures are wildly divergent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's not some blanket native culture across
No,
everywhere,
no,
and it's
not at
not
all.
like slight differences either. You've got like completely different gods, ethos,
Absolutely.
and some of these fucking.
You've got much more warlike tribes, and you've got much more peaceful.
Yeah,
hey, you guys
there
come
were like
through like we're good
civilized,
tribes.
cultured tribes
Yeah.
that were like afraid of the fucking the bastard murderous tribes.
Well, so there are tribes already on this side of the Mississippi that have largely integrated with European culture, and that being that there are daughters that have married Europeans. There are. I say married, become property of Europeans.
There were specifically in.
There are children in missionary schools. There, this is not.
You think about tribes.
We're 200 years into European settlement here.
Tribes in like the New York, Pennsylvania, out into Indiana area, the Midwestern tribes. There were some out there that were so close to European nobility that it was like really easy to marry into because. Like fucking settlers would meet these tribes and be like, oh, these are just fucking like European people,
right.
You know, and then 1,000 miles down the road, you got one that's gonna hack you to pieces. But
if we want to tack a really shitty qualifier on this, and I feel terrible saying this because it's not accurate, but I guess in terms of the way things worked out. The lucky tribes, and I'm saying lucky with quotes, the lucky tribes were the ones that were in the Northeast and integrated pretty quickly with European society.
Yeah.
They were better off in the long run today
than
those who were in the Southeast and certainly those who were out West.
Well, I'm from Michigan, as I say all the fucking time. Of course, the way I sound, listen to me. But like the natives in Michigan had again, bad choice of words, but like an easier time because I mean predominantly it wasn't warlike up there. It was
French.
Michigan Michigan was like a sacred area.
Right.
There was a lot less conflict up there anyway because there were more abundant resources, because all the fresh water.
They had a lot more fortune in that they originally were French in a French territory that didn't have a lot of oversight.
And
unlike
the
colonies,
French also came in.
It was a lot of trappers, like fur trappers and stuff, that were just out in the wilderness, right? It wasn't like France was like, "Hey, fucking Montreal or Toronto, we're gonna like this is our place now." You know what I mean? Like that was
the
not.
French settlers came in with a slightly gentler hand too. They weren't. They were more of like, we want the resources. We don't necessarily want to move here.
And even the Louisiana Purchase, you look at it, the French Louisiana territory, which went from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to modern day Canada and along the Rockies to the west and along the Mississippi to the east, they only did that for the fucking port of New Orleans.
Yeah.
That's it.
Pretty much.
That's all. That's the only place that they had
come in on the Gulf.
An actual city, actual government, actual anything, right? Everybody else that was through that territory was kind of on their own. And so the natives got to do what they wanted to do. The fucking settlers, like, good luck, you know? So that's it. We're talking about, like I said, Europeans have been here for a long time, but most of this land is largely just, good luck.
It's funny enough is I travel a lot for work, and I drive long distances. It's still that like.
Oh yeah.
Well, if you just like going from place to place, you go from town to town to town, and there are these nowheresvilles in between,
of course,
that are, I mean, like vast. I go to South Carolina next week. And South Carolina is so much just here's a decent sized town, here's nothing for 200 miles.
Right.
It's crazy, and the only thing that you'd get would be houses, suburbs.
How many towns of consequence can you name in South Carolina?
4 or 5.
I can name Charleston.
Yeah, it was Charleston, Greenville,
Greenville's not
Columbia.
Okay, Columbia's got
Spartanburg.
Yeah, I see.
Is that North Carolina?
I don't know. Anyway, let's jump back in here. I do get your point. There's still, but I mean, imagine those places.
So much to talk about.
Imagine those places just being nothing.
Yeah, well, that would be it.
No roads, no woods. No roads, no people, just woods.
Yeah,
just woods.
Also, if you're in a tribe, like
just dirt and trees and streams.
If you're in like a medium-sized tribe of like several thousand people or something, then you've got a purview of about 20 miles around your area.
Absolutely.
But then you're not fucking.
You've got a small settlement.
Yeah,
for your tribe.
And you're chilling out there.
And that's even if you are permanent settlers,
which is another thing.
And you've got hunting grounds.
I was going to initially be like pull up one of those maps that's like, look at this big swath here. This is Lakota territory. This here is Crow.
Right.
And that's like, but also no, because
not really.
There are 8 billion offshoots.
There's a lot of crossovers, and there's a lot of tribes that were part of the larger, like...
you'd have your independent groups and families who would live out there, just like any place.
The Sioux Nation had offshoots that were part of Sioux Nation, but they weren't really part of Sioux Nation proper.
Beholden to the government of the Sioux, But, then during times of conflict, that's where they pool.
Right.
And they're like, we're a part of this because we're fighting this guy. It's wartime. And that's where you get the big swaths that are
It's convoluted, and it's tribes that are comprised of smaller tribes that are all part of a bigger tribe, but I mean they're kind of doing their own thing.
Fascinating and exciting topic, and I'm really excited to dig into it in another episode. But
probably
this is again, just wanted to say why I'm not jumping in with the fucking native perspective all the time.
No, it's fine. Jump in where you want to jump in, man.
Yeah, I'm saying that I wanted to be coming from the native perspective
you wanted to go,
on all this.
Right.
I wanted to be the Paul Begala to your Tucker Carlson.
Oh, God damn it. Fuck you.
I'm Paul Begala.
How dare you compare me with that guy?
I was just doing Chris Kattan as Paul Begala, actually.
Okay, so with the population boom and, people continuing to flood these new states, the government established the Northwest Territory in 1787. So 4 years after independence, right? And that basically covered current Ohio.
11 years.
No, 83.
Oh, is that when we got full independence?
Yeah, the Declaration of Independence was 76, but we were balls deep in war.
Fucking terrible historian.
It's okay. That's why you're here, man.
I didn't take any notes for this episode.
Yeah, the Declaration of Independence was 76. That's when we said, fuck you, England. But then we had to fight a whole ass war, which had already started the year prior. But the actual end of the war, when the British said, okay, no mas, was 83. Yeah, I said it.
The British said no mas.
Yeah, I said it.
That's funny.
83.
That's our T-shirt for the episode. It just says no mas in Taco Bell font, and then it says the British.
With the British flag.
1782.
No, it's just a British flag that says no mas with a white flag across it. So 83 was the end of the Revolutionary War. 87, they established the Northwest Territory, which is basically current Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and like part of Minnesota, right? So sort of that Great Lakes area.
Fucking solid place to go.
North of the Ohio River.
The resources up in that area are unbelievable.
North of the Ohio River, east of the Mississippi, south of the Great Lakes, right? So that's that little right there. Also, Georgia was extended all the way out to the Mississippi, and we added the Mississippi Territory, which is south of that, right? So Georgia had this big old fat. It was a big old fat guy that went from the coast all the way to the Mississippi. Fat guy in Georgia, all in the same
big
sentence.
Old fat, the famous big fat Georgia guy.
If you don't know a fat guy in Georgia, send us a message. Delete everything podcast at gmail.com.
Remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
You're in the minority if you don't know a fat guy in Georgia. Maybe just because we're from Florida.
Do I know a fat guy in Georgia?
Yeah, you definitely do. Or from Georgia, at least.
I know a girl with big titties.
So as more of these territories open up, and, like I said, we just talking about Northwest Territory, that's 7.5 states, modern day states, right? That just opened up 4 years after independence. More people decide to venture into what is effectively native occupied territories, right? This is there are natives there. And we did acquire a lot of those territory via treaties with those natives. But we'll be here for a long time if we talked about every treaty that we signed and how badly we reneged on pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
So
we could go on that list for
that'll take
hot
a long
minute.
Long time. That's a whole separate episode. So, but people start to believe, as early, by the way, as 1787, there's this idea that American citizens, right? Because now we're the United States of America. We're no longer a British colony. American citizens have been divinely ordained by God to move into these territories, whether it's out of necessity for land or for game or, converting savages or whatever it is.
Just for shits and gigs.
We start to get this idea that becomes manifest destiny down the road. It takes a couple decades before it's referred to as that. But we start to get this idea that we are divinely ordained. The United States needs to be coast to coast. Jefferson had a large part in this. But we start to get this idea that it's our duty and it's our divine right to take these lands, right?
Manifest destiny. What a fucking bullshit. My favorite thing about manifest destiny is a funny thing to say. Along with the idea that, we had this divine right, it led mission trips like crazy into native territories, right?
We're going to get into those. That's why I said one of the reasons why people went west was to convert quote unquote savages, right?
You got to
save their souls.
Well, yeah, because many of them are very successful. The Baptists and the Lutherans specifically are very.
That's the whole reason that Mormons ended up in Utah.
Yeah, very successful in general because it's really not hard, I don't think, to travel to an isolated area with shiny things and be like, hey, guess who gave us this? It's your new God. And have people be like, I mean, sure, I guess. Do we get the things? It's like fucking whatever. But
you're gonna leave that here with us?
Yeah. So
cool. Your God's great. I mean, our God's great.
What is this? Irrigation? Cool.
Yeah. Our God is an awesome God. How does the song go? How does he reigns in a
hold on, you're gonna build a church? Wait, and a windmill? Okay. Now I'm just talking about fucking.
Oh shit! Your God is an awesome God, and he reigns in a.
Small digression there. Like a lot of voodoo gods in like Haiti and shit. The voodoo practitioners would just use the Jesus and Mary placards and imagery and shit, and they'd just be like, yeah, well, I guess our new blood god looks like Jesus. Cool.
This ought to get the white people out of here.
But yeah, missionaries were super successful, but there are also quite a few not so successful stories.
Yeah, there's
quite
a few.
Like legendarily horrifying tortures and fucking sacrifices, decapitations.
Like I said, some of the tribes were okay with these crackers coming along and either settling or passing through their lands. They were like, all right,
crazy idea.
Think about some of them were like, nah, dog, you got shit. We want it, and we fucking we kill other fucking warriors on horseback. Yeah. What do you think your pasty ass is gonna do? Oh, sleeping in your fucking tents with your wagon circled around and your horses in there? Fuck you. We'll kill you.
If you think about,
and that's to your point earlier about different cultures varying over tribes.
Yeah, dude, they're native tribes that just had cities, straight up cities, no other way to think about them. They had fucking, maybe more ecologically friendly structures, but roads, trade, government, police, shit like 100%. That. And
I don't know about police. I think they were pretty good about policing themselves, but
yeah, they would. The people that would do that, they would probably refer to as police.
I guess so.
I mean, I'm not
I just
saying
don't know that
fucking
there was
cops
like
in uniform. I mean, like, like yeah, they had probably law enforcement of a kind, you know.
this is our chief of the police. Stop and frisk. He was.
Boo! What Catskills bullshit is this? We're not doing Indian name jokes. That was a good one, though. I think anyone can say that was good.
The chief of police. He's just the chief, man.
Get the fuck out of here. But no, I'm saying like, so like, yeah, in a big city, 3,000 people or something. Your missionaries go in there, they'll probably be greeted kind of like, all right, I guess.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Sure,
Your
but
fucking white ass
you
family.
go into a tribe that's been living out in the middle of the fucking Appalachians for 190
especially a lot
years.
of these nomadic tribes, because they were like, we won't even be here when
the
cavalry comes through.
They've got
who if we kill all of them, nobody knows.
40 people living in the middle of the woods maybe might have a slightly different take on you trying to convert them.
No shit, right? So yeah, we are now we're fast forwarding or coming back to where we were before we went back in time. We're 1803, right? 1803, France and England are on the verge of war, and Thomas Jefferson negotiates the sale of the French-American territory.
Tertiary. Tortellini.
Thomas Jefferson negotiates the sale of the French-American territory, which we know as the Louisiana Purchase. So we added, at that point, modern-day Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, and more of Minnesota. All of that territory wasn't along state lines, like as we know them today, but that's just sort of to get the gist, right? There's like...
You said it's 1803?
1803, yeah.
So 1803, France and England are on the verge of war?
Yes.
1805.
Napoleon was doing his bullshit.
1805, oceans are now battlefields.
Huh?
Just leave that in.
Okay.
Master and Commander fans are going to love that.
Gotcha. So yeah, not all of that was along current state lines, but there was like even a little chunk on the top of Texas that was like in the mix with the Louisiana Purchase. But now we've got a fresh nation, right? 20 years old, and it's basically doubled in size overnight, almost doubled in size, like literally, boom, done, right? So obviously now we need to explore and map all that new land, right? So Jefferson and the Congress at the time commissioned multiple expeditions, the most famous of that one being Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, right? Lewis and Clark, that's that Superman show. Yeah, exactly.
Dean Cain.
Yeah, and what's her fuck? But by the way, they were not the first to do this. Like,
Superman? No, it's been done like a bunch of times.
It was done so many times. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of that guy who died. He was paralyzed because he fell off of a horse.
Christopher Reeves.
Yeah, he was Superman.
So you're going to talk about that guy that was mysterious. It's found dead mysteriously. The original TV Superman, George Reeves.
Nicolas Cage.
He never actually got to be Superman though.
Well, he had like that cameo in that one movie.
The Flash, the new one.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Actually, George Reeves would be a cool one to like talk about because it's a real case of like Hollywood homicide. Neither here nor there. Why are we talking about Superman?
Christopher Reeves killed him. Yeah, Lewis and Clark.
Terry Thatcher.
That's her. Did you look that up on your computer?
I was in the middle of it, and then I always start looking something up, and then it just pops in my head.
Your ADD brain, and then I'm talking, and you don't listen to a word I say, and you're not engaged,
huh?
And you're not inquisitive. I need you to be engaged and inquisitive. Not about Terry Thatcher, motherfucker.
Lewis and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman.
Shut the fuck up.
It was a 1993 drama.
I fucking hate
seasons.
You. Jesus Christ.
Terry Hatcher, not Thatcher.
Whatever. I don't give a shit.
Terry Thatcher is nobody. Margaret Thatcher is somebody. Thatcher. Terry Pratchett is a novelist.
I don't care anymore. I have a belt buckle that says Terry, and I haven't worn it yet.
Terry?
It just says, I sent you a picture of it. I got it at the fucking flea market. It just says Terry. It's bronze, and it just says Terry in big old letters.
Was it you I went to the...
And the lady goes, is your name Terry? And I said, yes, ma'am.
I went to the flea market in Daytona one time. Actually, when I got this shirt, I'm wearing a shirt for the band Between the Buried and Me for the Colors 10-year anniversary tour. I went with our mutual friend Jake Teeters and Brian the Mailman. and
Brian Schilling, yeah,
some other guy, and we went to the Daytona flea market on our way back.
See episode, I don't know, 10ish.
Yeah.
If you want to hear Brian Schilling be really high,
he's so high,
and talk about late night horror hosts.
That's a good episode.
Great episode. But we were all high because he hotboxed the studio.
I found, we were all accidentally high, and I don't smoke weed, so there's the ending gets a little silly.
Yeah.
But I found at the Daytona flea market there my favorite thing I've ever found in any flea market. It was a hot sauce. It was like Crazy Killer Hot Sauce, and the picture on the front of it was serial killer Eileen Wuornos.
Wow. Yeah. Jesus. Okay, so Lewis and Clark,
New Adventures of Superman.
We're not the first. We're not the first to explore across the U.S. to the Pacific. Like 10 years earlier, a gentleman by the name of Alexander Mackenzie. He was a Scottish explorer and fur trader, led an expedition all the way out to the Pacific. That was in 1789. And also, again, just to reiterate 1,000 times, European people have been on this continent now for 200 years. Which
is a long fucking time.
So there are European settlers sporadically sort of out in this direction that have sort of made nice with the natives in the area. If they found a peaceful tribe that didn't murder them, then they put up a house and you know, chickens and
part
horses.
of the thing about having this like wild untapped land is that if you were like young and adventurous and you wanted to like forage out for yourself, you just fucking go.
And a lot of natives were not upset if you were there just making your way. By the way, if you've got cows and you've got chickens and you've got, you know, vegetables and stuff like that, they would set up trade. There were tribes that would come and go, hey, you know, Farmer Dip Dilbert or whatever. I don't know.
Farmer Dip Dilbert.
Farmer Dip Dilbert. You know, and they
Dip Dilbert's dive duck.
Yeah,
dip,
and they would barter. They would barter with people. So it was not. There are people out here, right? But Jefferson especially had this obsession with getting to the Pacific Ocean way before the Declaration of Independence and way before the Revolutionary War. And you know, Jefferson was born in England. Jefferson came from a wealthy family. He was well educated. He was well traveled.
Well, he also was obsessed with making his name. Like he penned the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, he was the minister to France.
Yeah, but that was before his presidential run. And once he was president, he's like, I need something to fucking nail my history.
Even before that, he was if you do a deep dive on Jefferson, he was a very inquisitive guy. So like when they found in Kentucky, when they found what they thought initially were elephant bones, turned out to be woolly mammoths, he was writing letters and like trying to establish contact with the people who found these to try and get bones and teeth and things of that nature, because he wanted to investigate them and he wanted to gain knowledge about these things. You know, when he built Monticello, he had people send him pomegranate seeds and fig seeds and this and that. So he had this huge orchard at Monticello. He was just one of these guys that like there was never enough information. There was never enough education. He was, and despite all the downfalls of Jefferson vis-a-vis
slavery,
him being critical of slavery while owning slaves, and him being
raping them.
Right. Yeah. Him being
Thomas Jefferson Slave Rapist is my one-man show now on Broadway.
Him being supportive of the natives while also, you know, sort of supporting legislation to displace them.
Genocide in the history of the world.
So, well, no, that's not until our seventh president comes along. Is that
Jackson?
Jackson 7? Yeah, I think Jackson was number 7.
Shit.
Yeah. So lucky number 7, baby. So he had this obsession with getting to the Pacific, at the time the South Ocean they called it, but the Pacific Ocean. He specifically wanted to find a water route that went from the Atlantic to the Pacific. This was a huge obsession.
Yeah, that's the Lewis and Clark
that he
thing,
could find. Yeah, and that was part of Lewis and Clark.
The Columbia River, correct?
That's where they came out on the Pacific in Oregon. Yeah, in modern day Oregon, just north of Astoria, Oregon, is where they landed at the Pacific. just on the north bank of the Columbia River. Yeah, at the mouth of the Columbia and the Pacific Ocean. So Lewis and Clark set out from St. Charles, Missouri in August of 1804. And their mission was to sort of make it past the Rockies and all the way to the Pacific.
Hold on, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here I am my whole life thinking like, these fucking guys went from one ocean to the other.
No.
Missouri's not, that's the middle of the goddamn continent.
Missouri is on the west bank of the Mississippi.
This is 50% less interesting now.
Well, but you have to figure, right? We just got the Louisiana Purchase, which gave us everything from the Mississippi River to the Rockies.
Oh, that tracks. Yeah, okay.
From the Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana, a little chunk of western Louisiana was still Spanish territory, all the way up to what is now Canada. Like I said, we doubled in size almost overnight. So they went, they were able, I'm sure they did come from somewhere on the eastern seaboard. But what I'm saying is where they set out on their expedition was in Missouri, because now we are in new land, new America, like getting from the eastern seaboard to the Mississippi. At that point, there were established routes. There were places that, there were forts and garrisons and places you could go from A to B without really a lot of running into natives and getting in. And a lot of the natives knew where the sort of well-trodden areas were, and they just said, fuck it, we'll be down here.
We're probably not going to fucking chunk our way through Louisiana if we can avoid it.
They had as much reason to avoid conflict as the settlers did.
Yeah, to not get murdered, yeah.
Right, because they had muskets and shit too, you know? So like they had as much reason to sort of avoid the conflicts. Where you start seeing a lot of skirmishes and stuff is when we start going into new areas that are hunting grounds or settlements or whatever of native tribes that are not fucking cool with that, right?
Right. Or at the very least, not as diplomatic as some others.
Right. So their expedition started in earnest from St. Charles, Missouri, right? So August of 1804 is when they left, and again, their goal was to make it past the Rockies, which was the edge of the Louisiana Purchase, the Louisiana Territory at the time, over the Rockies all the way to the Pacific, right? On Jefferson's orders, we want to see to map as much as you can all the way out to the South Ocean. The expedition took over a year. They got to the Pacific, like I said, at the mouth of the Columbia River in Oregon, in, I want to say, November of 1805. So a year and September, October, it was a year and 3 months. Mostly along the way, they established largely peaceful relationships with like 24-ish native tribes. They produced about 140 accurate maps. They made contact with over 70 tribes. They cataloged over 200 plant and animal species. They got a lot of information on trading routes of trappers and hunters and stuff like that. And more or less, they just set up everything for future exploration. Now, we have this largely favorable, like a lot of things in history, view of Lewis and Clark. They were complicated men, right? The whole Sacagawea thing is not... we have this, like we learn in school that Sacagawea was like their guide and like, mm-hmm. She wasn't. She was married to a French explorer. She was property of a French explorer. Mm-hmm. She largely acted as a translator, and because she had an infant son, the whole time they're traveling, she had a baby.
Who became a pretty famous character of note as well, if I remember.
Yes, but she was in large part there for translation, and also, just as a side note, because seeing a native woman traveling with all these white gentlemen, they set out with 40 people, I think, total. What kind of was like just disarming enough that like if you're a native tribe and you're like, oh fuck, dude, like get on the horses, grab your fucking shit, and let's go. You see this native woman carrying a baby, and you go, wow, what the fuck's going on?
Maybe these guys aren't going to try and fucking massacre us as soon as they see us. Yeah.
Exactly. So
it's like a figurehead. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole Sacagawea angle of it is complicated. Even more complicated is a slave named York, who was Meriwether Lewis's slave, I believe it was Lewis's slave. Shit. Now I don't remember if he was Lewis or Clark's slave. Either way, he was a slave that went on this whole expedition there and back again, right? Not all of them made it there and
Hobbit's
back.
journey?
Yes. Not all of them made it there and back, right? York made it there and back. And he was, by all accounts, a fucking pretty badass hunter, tracker, but he was property. And even when they got back, when there was sort of all this hullabaloo about, these guys that went all the way to the Pacific and mapped all this shit.
He was William Clark's slave.
And he was Clark's slave. Okay. That's right. Meriwether Lewis had a dog whose name was Seaman.
S-E-M-E-N or S-E-A-M-E-N?
S-E-A-M-E-N. Or S-E-A-M-A-N.
Yeah. Seaman.
Seaman.
Come, Seaman. We can do this for any topic. Yeah, this is like our great talent. I swear to God.
Come, Seaman.
Come, Seaman.
I love it.
Come, Seaman. That's forever. I'm gonna get that tattooed on me. But it says here that York was actually the slave of William Clark's father, and Clark inherited him.
Okay, well, that's cool.
Yeah. Guess.
Question mark. He, even after they got back and they were sort of celebrated, Clark did not release him from bondage. He stayed in the sort of employ, quote unquote. He stayed property of William Clark for the duration of his life. There's some things later on about whether he ended up going west and joining a native tribe, but as far as we know, he stayed property.
Yeah, it says
Forever.
here that York expected to be given his freedom after the successful expedition was over. I mean, you figure you just spent several years traveling all over the wilderness and having this guy's back.
Yeah, you'd think.
And apparently Clark got really fucking pissed off and whipped him and eventually sold him.
Wow.
Yeah, what a piece of shit.
Like I said, they are complicated figures in history, right? They did some things that were notable and commendable, I suppose.
Terry Hatcher would never have done that. Dean Cain probably would have.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So it sounds like all of this expedition and stuff out west was for the sake of knowledge and establishing settlements and whatnot, but there was also a political angle to all of this.
Who'd have thunk it?
Right? Jefferson firmly wanted to establish U.S. sovereignty over all the tribes to the west of the Mississippi, right? He wanted to say, hey, you guys are cool here, but this is U.S. land, right? We bought it from the French for 15 million whopping ass fucking dollars, and you are on U.S. land. He wanted to establish this sovereignty over them. He also wanted to find out what resources might exist out there, right? It is important. And he was also concerned about England and Russia and Spain, right? Because Spain bordered the Louisiana territory to the west of the Rockies and all the way down to Louisiana, and as far up as California, top of California, Utah, Nevada, like that whole area up there. And there, he was concerned about, it was called the Oregon Country, which is modern day Oregon, Washington, right? He was worried because the English were already eyeballing that area, and the Russians had already established Russian America, which is modern day Alaska. Yeah. But they were eyeballing that area for agricultural settlements and stuff, because there was always it's so hard to grow things in Alaska that there was always food shortages in Russian America, right? So there were already Russian sailors that were coming down and looking at that very fertile sort of Washington, Oregon area to go, hey, we can establish. Oh yeah, it's very fertile.
That's fucking cool as shit. Why didn't I know about that? I didn't
because
know about
most people.
I didn't know about Russian
because
America.
This is delete everything with Patrick and Riley. So
no,
he was.
I mean, it makes so much sense that Russia would be fucking coming across the Bering Strait and.
Well, we got Alaska from Russia. That was all Russian territory there.
I feel like I knew that, but it never fucking clicked in my head.
It's one of those things that falls out of your brain real easily.
Yeah, it never clicked with me that they would actually have colonized it, though. Why the fuck would you go? Because it's nothing. It's cold. They're Russian.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, we're talking about Soviet collapse. So, I mean, think about what the USSR used to be in the 80s before Soviet Russia collapsed.
No.
It was fucking damn near half of the fucking landmass of all of the land on Earth.
Yeah, well, I think
was
about
all USSR.
I think about when Genghis Khan came down from the steppe, he fucking cut through Russia, and Russia was like barbarians. They were like, they were full like fucking bare skin, like, and people don't think about that on this side of the pond here. That like Russia, until it became a more settled place, was like a fucking. That's
descended
where, like,
from Neanderthals.
That's the shit where like Conan the Barbarian would take place. Like that's the fucking. Those were the real like frozen wastes.
That's where if you look way, way, way back pre Homo sapien, I mean that's all of that area was Neanderthals.
Yeah.
After they sort of emigrated out of modern day, you know, sort of the cradle of civilization, which is that whole like Egypt, Israel, Jordan, you know, Syria, all that right there, Turkey. That is where everything started, and then everything kind of went out from there. And so, like, all that whole northern Europe and Asia area is all post-Neanderthal.
We should do Russia one day.
We could. We should.
Yeah,
we will.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like we do a lot of America shit. We should just.
Yeah, why the fuck not? No, so I'm good with whatever. So yeah, the Russians were looking at sort of all this land along the Columbia River that's very fertile, and it's not as cold, obviously, as Alaska. And they were going, hey, we can set up like agricultural areas here to feed the people up here in Russian America. So, and again, because Spain sort of had everything claimed from Western Louisiana all the way out to the Pacific, you know, north along the Rockies on the east, and you know, to like that top of California, Nevada, Utah, that Oregon territory, right? Oregon country was sort of one of those things. It was like no man's land. And so Jefferson was like, hey, before somebody else, like he had this vision, I want coast to coast. I want this country to be coast to coast. Right. And so before anybody else can lay claim to that and we have to fight it or pay for it or whatever, let's get out there and establish something. So yeah. So we ended up, by the time Lewis and Clark got out there, they built up, you know, some I can't remember what they called it. I'm sorry, I did not write it down, but they built a little outpost out there that was American.
Fort Boner. Yeah.
Fort.
So you're saying that the Louisiana Purchase included the Oregon territories?
No. Louisiana Purchase stopped at the Rockies.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So
we were just going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, because it wasn't particularly claimed. Is that like the idea?
Yeah, basically it was. Well, I mean, unless you were native.
Well, yeah. Again, guys,
it wasn't claimed by any European, or I guess in the case of Russia, Eurasian.
Think of this entire thing as a big round of Stratego.
Yeah,
Stratego. That
Stratego is what I've always called it.
It's a big game of Stratego, and every move that you make, there's like somebody on the other side, like standing next to the board, that goes like, "Hey, that's mine. What the fuck?"
And also know that even if we gloss over, "Hey, there were natives here the whole time,"
there were natives. Here
we are certainly aware, and it's in the back of our minds this whole time.
If anything, it's actually fucking bugging the shit out of me that like these like black holes of history are manifesting themselves in my head while I'm thinking about it. I'm like, so what was the fucking native response here? What was the legitimate native response, like from their perspective? Like where did this shit
depends
come
on
from?
the tribe.
Yeah, exactly. When I can't speak to it because I haven't fucking called
depends
the tribe.
Depends on the tribe. Yeah. So also, I'd put a little side note here. I know that I'm saying the Spanish owned, like, and I laid out specific states. These are all approximations.
Broad strokes, folks.
Yeah, please don't add us. Talking about.
Add us.
Well, there were also some parts of Colorado, and there were some parts of Wyoming and Oregon that the Spanish. We know.
Give me some money so I can go to college.
Yeah, we know. These are all the borders that existed during all of these purchases and during all these different European nations holding. These are all along topographical lines, and I don't know if you've looked at those fucking states out there. They're all fucking square. So, like I get it. They owned part of Colorado and they owned part of Wyoming. Right, because the current borders are square as fuck. And the Rocky Mountain Range is not square as fuck. So don't add us, please.
And I know.
Not on that. You can add us on so many things, not that.
There are tribes out there that have thousands and thousands of people that encompass wide swaths of land and massive amounts of area. I get it. I'm not talking about that.
Right. So anyway, now there is an even greener light for people to start settling west of the Mississippi, like en masse. Like it bumps up now, right? And it goes without saying that this has a pretty huge impact on the native population in these sort of heretofore mostly uninhabited areas, right? Uninhabited by Europeans.
Yeah, and this push in general had already pushed quite a few natives.
Right. And there have already been skirmishes like crazy on this side of the Mississippi and on this side of the Rockies.
Full-blown battles, war encampments, movements, like...
And a lot of those tribes, like I said earlier, they've either left the area and settled elsewhere if, there's enough space to do so, or if there's enough space to cohabitate. A lot of them said, okay, you stay over there and we'll stay down here.
I mean, just think about that, though. Like, say you've got 10 tribes in a particular area. 3 of them are like, fuck you, we're not going anywhere. And they fight and are slaughtered. And the other 7 are like, maybe we can just fucking pack up. We'll go to the winter camp, we'll fucking move a little bit west. Maybe
or sometimes they say, hey, let's all band together and fucking take these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's so convoluted that it's difficult to, like, without dedicating hours to it, it's difficult to say, okay, because individual tribes reacted in different ways to, based on where they were geographically, how many people were coming through,
what their resources
how many people were
were,
settling. There was a lot of
what
factors.
Time of year it was.
A lot of factors. So,
like if you've got a month for your harvest and your move to a winter camp.
Yeah.
Like, do you have time to set up your war party? Or are you like, we'll do it next year maybe? And by that time it might be too late.
So so we've got skirmishes going on with natives this whole time.
Again, I'm not trying to give white man's perspective on fucking native shit. All right.
But as we get into the latter 1810s, we have the First Seminole War, right? Which happened here where we are currently. And that started because U.S. authorities wanted to arrest runaway slaves that would cross into Florida, into Spanish territory occupied by Seminoles. And they would cross and join Seminole tribes.
The Seminoles, by the way, another amalgamated tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They were not originally from Florida. They after the Spanish decimated a lot of the Florida tribes, you had tribes like the Seminoles and the Creeks and stuff like that. That again, you're talking about. Right now we're in 1817 or 18, I think, is when the First Seminole War starts. The Spanish, we know for a fact, set up this St. Augustine colony in 1565.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 250 years almost. So.
Yeah, and then the Seminoles being an amalgamated tribe of also a bunch of different Florida tribes.
Right.
Florida also, we're not talking much about Florida mostly because the Western expansion kind of just passes past it. But the Florida tribes are crazy. There's some wild shit here. If you go to like tribes near the Keys or shit like that, the fucking like. It's essentially, you see Avatar: The Way of Water? Like, I swear to God.
I have not.
Because
I'm a self-respecting human being.
It's a good flick. Those Avatar movies are good.
Sure.
But like, I was at a museum recently, the Gainesville Natural History Museum, and they have an exhibit on some South Florida native tribes, and it's unbelievable. Like,
I believe it.
They're all decked out in seashells, and they've got like they're on the ocean.
Yeah, they were absolute, and they were absolute badasses.
Yeah,
I mean,
amazing.
I mean, when you look at mostly going into the Second Seminole War, but I mean, like they were not. Well, you know what? We'll get into that. Okay. We're gonna get into that by the time we hit the end of this episode, right?
Yeah.
So. The U.S. was upset. Well, mostly people living in the southern U.S. where there were slaves and where there was agriculture, and they needed slaves because that was the only way that agriculture made sense and made money, right? Was to have free labor.
Yeah.
So these slaves, when they would run away, they would get across the Spanish border into Florida. And all of that sort of North Florida area was occupied by Seminoles. And the Seminoles were like, yeah, sure, come on. Yeah. Like, you guys You guys
those
are cool?
those guys are fucking
You guys
with
are
you
cool?
too? Yeah.
Oh, the white people are fucking with you? Yeah, come on, you're part of us now.
We got you.
Right. So after enough complaining, the U.S. Department of War gave orders to our favorite guy, General Andrew Jackson.
What a fucking piece of shit.
I know. But they told him, head south, go across the Spanish border and bring the Seminoles, quote, under control.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We need to get these savages under control.
Super good idea for swamp people. Yeah, so let's bring our horses and our thousands of men down into this almost damn near uninhabitable swamp that these thousands of people have been able to live in quite successfully.
Well, but you know what's crazy is that the area of like southeastern Georgia and all the way down Florida was like very, very, very coveted land and desirable land by Europeans.
The like St. Simon's Island and
the
shit like
Europeans
that from Savannah
wanted that shit so bad.
Well, you've got a huge port in like St. Simon's in Georgia, and some of the most beautiful wetland you ever saw. You've been up in that area. Absolutely fucking gorgeous area, like almost otherworldly beautiful in some respects. And
if it wasn't for the bugs and the heat,
bugs in the heat sucks. To drive through, it's great. But like
in the AC,
but just absolutely beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
And
it is very gorgeous.
A huge port city is the thing. So that's where all the coveting comes from.
Right.
Savannah too, big port.
Yeah, it was a very, very desired land.
Yeah. Then you get to Jacksonville and they're like, ew.
Well, I mean, before Jacksonville proper was there, you got to look. You've got, the mouth of the St. Johns River there that goes all the way into Central Florida. So, I mean, it was.
Also, very, very coveted. Before colonialization, the Timucua had a massive settlement, thousands and thousands of people that lived there.
Yeah. Well, so Jackson gets sent to bring the Seminoles, quote, under control. He destroyed a fort called the Negro Fort. This was in Apalachicola-ish, Florida, like up in the Panhandle area, right?
That's Apalachicola is like Gulf Coast.
I think it's Apalachicola. I might be wrong on that.
I mean, it would make sense because that would be, if you're coming down through Georgia, that's someplace that you could stop into.
I don't have all my notes in front of me, but I believe that's correct. I may be way off. It might be a different A. At any rate, broad strokes. Are you looking up the Negro Fort?
I am. Wewahichka, Florida.
No, there was an A. What's the river there?
It's called Fort Gadsden, Negro Fort. Fort Gadsden, Wewahichka.
In the Panhandle. Right?
Yeah, Wewahichka's in the Panhandle. I do work there sometimes.
East of Pensacola.
Yeah.
But speaking of Pensacola, Andrew Jackson occupied Pensacola, which again is Spanish territory, right? Mm-hmm. He destroyed a ton of Seminole and Creek and Maroon and McCuskey settlements, native settlements. And this first Seminole War culminated in 1818 with the, I put this as a side note because I thought it was really fucking interesting. Mostly because Andrew Jackson ended up being a president after all this. So we're talking about acts of war, right? You've gone across a sovereign border.
Uh-huh.
You've attacked indigenous tribes, which, okay, if they weren't flying the Spanish flag, then it's a whatever. But
regardless, an act of war on Spanish territory.
You've occupied a Spanish territory, Pensacola, which had an outpost there. Mm-hmm. So he occupied that. He destroyed a fort, which we're not sure how much the Spanish were like, okay, cool, that we'll take that under our flag too.
Well, they
or
at
if
the
it was
very
all
least,
Seminole.
they at the very least didn't burn the fucking fort. So
yeah, no shit. And it culminated in 1818 with the Arbuthnot and Ambrister incident, where Andrew Jackson captured, tried, and executed 2 British citizens in Spanish territory, right? These were British citizens who were in... One of the guys was born in Nassau, so he was born in the Bahamas. But they were both they were both part of the British Navy, right? That had been discharged from the British Navy. Not dishonored. They didn't do anything fucked up. They just were they were with the Navy for a while and then they weren't. They were helping enslaved people to come down here and set up fucking shop down in Spanish territory, right? Jackson captured them, tried them, executed them on Spanish land.
Whoa.
Yeah, that
what an
incident.
entitled fucking prick.
Right. that incident triggered like huge protests from the British and Spanish governments, right? Because the British were like, you can't just fucking execute citizens without there being like
sovereign citizens on sovereign land.
Actual trial. Right. It's not even in the US, right? So so you had this fucking,
and it's not like they weren't allowed to be there.
Yeah.
It's just a country.
Right. You assembled this kangaroo court in a place where you don't even have jurisdiction, and you executed British citizens.
So it seems
right. And Spain is like, what the fuck are you doing this shit? You're executing. By the way, Spain and France are like on the verge of war too, because Napoleon, again, still.
But also, I mean, like, it's if a slave escaped from the American colonies,
right,
and got their way into Spanish territory, that's free game. They're fucking free. That's sovereign territory.
That's the slave owner's problem.
That's
man.
done. Have escaped.
Yeah, that's your problem, guy who owns people. Like,
if I murder a guy,
the
go to
American
Mexico,
government,
I go Mexico.
Right? The American government needs to get involved to go fucking take down native tribes in a different country's territory to be like, here's your slaves back.
Well, here's Andrew
That's
Jackson's
fucking
whole
nuts.
bag because he was a fucking piece of shit.
Big time. But so there were.
You guys can't tell I don't like Andrew Jackson.
We are not fans of Andrew
Old
Jackson.
Dickory, I call him.
Thick hickory is what I call him on Inconsequential Presidents.
Fucking piece of shit that guy is.
So, like I said,
fuck Andrew Jackson.
That triggered some protests from the British and Spanish governments, obviously. It also triggered an investigation by Congress, by the U.S. Congress, that found that Jackson was in the wrong. They were like, you fucked up, bro.
You piece of shit.
But they did not do shit from a punitive stance. They just said, hey, Drew, don't you do that again.
Andy, listen.
Yeah, and they wagged their finger at him.
And then later when he's running for president, he's like, so I went in there. It was the best massacre. Yeah. I got these two guys.
Right. And then he signed the Indian Removal Act.
Yeah.
So, but basically, when all of this shit kind of came to an end, it pretty much highlighted the fact that Spain couldn't defend their territory in Florida. Again, Napoleon was fucking with them in Europe.
Yeah. Well,
so
a lot of the
Napoleonic
seafaring wars were around the American borders and around Mexico, the Gulf. Yeah.
They were basically tapped.
Yeah, all the way out into the
warring
Pacific.
with France. They were tapped. They could not defend their colony, their territories here.
In 1805, I believe, the HMS Surprise tailed a French frigate around Cape Horn into the Pacific Oceans.
HMS Surprise, huh?
Oceans are now battlefields. That's another Master and Commander.
Jesus Christ. So
3 cheers for Lucky Jack. All right, go ahead.
So Spain basically lost the entire panhandle because Jackson was holding it, and eventually they opted in 1818 after this whole incident with Arthbuster and Bibble Blocks. Arbuthnot and Ambrister. They opted to sign a treaty, the Adams-Onis Treaty, sort of ceding Florida to the U.S. in exchange for the U.S. recognizing Spain's border in the west, right? So sort of all this stuff north of Mexico that Spain was holding west of the Rockies,
right into Texas, and then over
right. They
Texas,
said,
Nevada.
okay, fine. You say that this is our land, and we'll give you Florida, right? I wonder how long that lasted.
Let me see. No, I'm not looking that up.
A little over 20 years. Well, actually, not really, because then Mexico Mexico gets in the mix here. But so the U.S. takes possession of Florida in 1921, right? In the meantime, skirmishes are ongoing in Florida with the Seminoles.
Yeah.
And, we
should be pointed out, too, that Florida changed hands quite a few times
whole
back in the day. English to Spanish to English to Spanish to English to Spanish to American.
Yeah. Not quite that many times, but damn near. Obviously, we know how the skirmishes with the natives and all that stuff ends. Eventually, in 1923, so 2 years after the U.S. takes control of Florida, which is not a state just yet, but will become a state, the Seminoles signed the Treaty of Moultrie Creek, which is literally right down the road from. But
Yeah.
I grew up in the neighborhood that borders, or I didn't grow up, but when we moved here, we lived in the neighborhood that borders Moultrie Creek.
I've canoed and kayaked on Moultrie Creek many times.
All up in Moultrie Creek. I've jumped off of a fucking dock and fished and boated and kayaked.
I was in like an inflatable raft one time, and it was like getting dark, and I'm trying to paddle my way home, and the fucking thing gets punctured by oysters, and like hear alligators just kind of chirping off in the sun. I'm like, fuck.
There's a lot of gators in there. So yeah, they signed the Treaty of Moultrie Creek, in which they agreed to leave North Florida to a 4,000 acre reservation in Central Florida, basically like Ocala area, right? We're not done with the Seminole Wars. That's the end of the first Seminole War.
There's a bunch of them.
We're not done with the Seminole Wars entirely, right?
Well, the Seminoles keep on fighting until they win. So
yeah. So, by the way, while all this is going on, we're 20 years into the Louisiana Purchase, right? We're in the mid 1820s now, right? 20 years into the Louisiana Purchase, 40 years into being an independent nation. People are moving westward in droves. And, we started with, some absolute go-getters pre-Louisiana Purchase being out in this direction, west of the Mississippi. Now we've got some intermediate go-getters after the purchase, right? And pretty soon,
some go-on getters.
Coming up here in part 2 of this, the government is basically going to make it super convenient for anyone who's down on their luck to head out, right? Head out west, right? Gold has not been discovered yet in the western U.S. territories. We found it east of the Mississippi, like they found gold in like places like North Carolina and stuff. And we know there's gold in places like New Mexico, but that's Spanish territory, right? So the gold boom doesn't start until we find gold out in California, we're still a couple decades away from that. So I'm on a tangent a little bit. So people are moving west, right? A lot of them.
Yeah, 1820, interesting time in America, interesting time all over the world. Antarctica was discovered in 1820. We got a new king in England.
Why? I just said I'm on a tangent anyway. And then
just context.
Okay, fine.
Got a new, the madness of King George starts shortly here. King George ascends the throne.
Lopping off wives' heads. No, that wasn't King George. That was King Henry.
No, King George went just fucking insane. He was like a crazy person.
Was he syphilis or was that Henry?
I think there was a
I thought one of the Henrys was syphilis.
It was a syphilis. I'd have to look up the actual cause of the madness of King George.
I think one of the Henrys, the 7th maybe, was the one that started lopping off his wives' heads.
Yeah, that's Henry. Henry VIII.
Is that the 8th?
It's Henry VIII. I am. Yeah.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was the 7th.
He's the one who's always lopping heads.
I thought the song was wrong.
And he's like.
Yeah, he ended up dying of tertiary syphilis.
Yeah, well, fuck that guy. Fat fuck.
Yeah, he's just fucking his
gout
dripping
to go
ass
with
dick.
That cake-eating opulent piece of shit.
Jesus Christ. So, all right, now we're both on a tangent.
Excuse me, May 11th, 1820, the HMS Beagle, all right, the ship that will eventually take young Charles Darwin to the Galapagos Islands.
We're in the mid-20s.
Is what?
We're in the mid-20s. We're already past 1823.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Can I continue?
Yeah, I guess.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, sure.
Are you sure?
Why not?
I see you still looking at your computer. That's why not. Engaged and inquisitive, Riley.
The Daogong Emperor succeeds to the throne of the Qing dynasty in China.
Who the fuck is going to be like, oh, the Daogong, oh, okay, now I know where we're at historically. Nobody's going to say that. Nobody's like, oh, I'm an expert in the Daogong dynasty. Now I know where it stands in contrast to American westward expansion. If you are a person,
the 6th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica is published.
If you are a person who's an expert in the Daogong fucking dynasty of China and you didn't know about westward expansion and now you're able to link it from a timeline perspective to westward expansion in America, if you are that person, please send us a message. DeleteEverythingPodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. All right, I'm gonna shut your computer if you don't stop, and I'm gonna continue. So, people are moving west. Lots of people are moving west. Too many people are moving west, probably, if you asked a Native American. So obviously, in addition to frequent clashes between the natives and the frontiersmen / women,
if you asked a native at that time, I think they'd say something along the lines of like, there goes the neighborhood.
I hate you. Yeah, it's the original gentrification. This is OG gentrifying going on. So
They're like, well, we got to do a rain dance, keep the property values down.
oh boy, are we going to get into that in part 2? You're going to find out about the ghost dance and how the American government made it illegal.
Oh, fuck that.
Because the ghost dance was made up by the natives to make the white people go back to where they came from. And the U.S. government said, no, that's illegal.
You can't do that.
Don't do a dance to make us go back home. Fucking stop it.
Be fucking ghost dancing
Guys
all over
better
the place.
quit. So, all right. So, like I said, too many people are moving west. So, in addition to all the clashes between the natives and the frontiersmen and women, there are a large number of natives dying of shit like cholera and smallpox and influenza. It is decimating large populations of natives the further west we go, right? The further we go into tribes that have had minimal, once you get into like the Sioux and the Apache and all these tribes, the Mohawks out way west,
no
right?
natural like inoculations whatsoever against European diseases.
Most of the ones on this side, right, on the eastern side of the U.S., again, have been interacting in some form
a couple hundred years at this point.
Yeah, with Europeans for a long time. So they were decimated 200 years ago. The ones who lived have lived with sort of natural immunities and spread those to their children and yada, yada, yada. So, but we are going to do a little scooch of a fast forward here. Just a little bit. We're going to go from the mid-20s to 1930, right? Andrew Jackson is now the president.
1830.
Yeah.
You said 19.
I'm sorry. We're going to go from the mid-1820s to 1830. Yeah. Andy J is now the president because
What a fucking piece of shit.
Because war crimes and stuff don't discount you from being the president a few years later.
There seems to be something about America that if you are a miserable fuckbag piece of shit, people want you to be president.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
You get to have more power.
Yes, I've witnessed that in my lifetime.
A whole bunch.
Clinton.
So Andy J is now the president. To pause for applause.
Ooh.
He signs the Indian Relocation Act because he's the fucking coolest president. This, by the way, reignites the Seminole Wars.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Well, because that happens in 1830, right? The Treaty of Moultrie Creek happened in 1823. So it's been 7 years since the U.S. government said, hey, look, you're going to cede all of this land in northern Florida, and we're going to give you 4,000 acres in the center of Florida. And now 7 years later, we're going, hey, by the way, new thing, you got to get the fuck out of here, and you got to go to Oklahoma. Modern Oklahoma is where think of Oklahoma without the panhandle, right? Just square it off.
I mean, boy, I don't know about you, but I might choose Oklahoma over Orlando. Fuck.
Jesus Christ. Well, I mean, but at least the Treaty of Moultrie Creek established their land in Florida, not necessarily the lands that they inhabited previously, but it was in the ballpark. You know what I mean? Like the topography is the same. The hunting is the same. You know what I mean? Like It's not the topography and the animals you can hunt between here and fucking Oklahoma
Slightly different.
are enormously different, right? So obviously the Seminoles are like, hang on.
Can we? I don't think that our swamp canoes are gonna fucking do so well. And
yeah, they're like, hey, hang on a second. Okay, 7 years ago.
First off, suck my balls.
Yeah, 7 years ago, y'all motherfuckers said, hey, leave here and we'll give you this land. Now you're telling us that we have to relocate to Oklahoma they offered like a title. You trade this land and you'll get titled lands out there in a place that I've never fucking seen before.
Titled lands like English lord shit. Like you can be the Duke and Duchess.
No, it was like you get a fucking acre over here, right? Every family, because part of the Indian Removal Act was it also pushed for native tribes to assimilate to an American way of life.
Yeah.
Sending children to missionary schools, to religious missionary schools. So it's like it was very
another thing I don't want to comment too much on from the white man's perspective, but like the most insidious possible thing.
Yeah,
that
100%.
You could fucking
100%.
do.
100%.
You know?
Let them fucking live their goddamn lives.
There's no perspective whatsoever that you couldn't have been a person at the time being like, that's great. We'll send them to a Catholic school. We'll cut
well,
their
sure, but
hair.
that still exists in 2023.
Yeah,
there are
it's
still
fucking-
people who are like,
you're
not a Christian? This is a Christian nation. It's like, it really isn't. It's a nation that says, who fucking cares what religion you want to be?
That's
You're
supposed to be.
free to do it.
It's supposed to be in any case.
It's
yeah.
literally in the fucking Bill of Rights. You have freedom of religion. Anyone you want.
But it's just
Anyone.
the insidious nature.
You have the
of,
freedom to make up a religion
of
and
like,
be that
we're,
religion.
We're not gonna control you. We're gonna make you us. Is
Right.
so
Right.
fucked.
100%.
That's what a virus does. Like that's a fucking. That is literally like how like bacterial amoebas operate. You know.
Right. Well, so, and by the way, you know, like I said, the Indian Relocation Act now legislates that any tribes east of the Mississippi, mostly in desirable areas in the southeast, like Florida, right, could pay the government for their land, right? The land that they've been on for probably a long time.
Thousands and thousands of years. Huh?
You know, and even if they've relocated from another area long enough that it's the same as some fucking cracker with a goddamn coonskin hat going into fucking Missouri and being like, this is my land
mine
now.
now.
You know what I mean? I put a fence around it and a house on it. It's mine, you know? So
The passage of time, I think, is so hard to illustrate here. But like you imagine the families pushed out of one area in you know tribal removal hell and put into another one, and they've got 40 years under their belt working in this area before the American government comes through, and they're like, hey, we need you to fucking move again.
and you have to think like, you know, these tribes, they have things going on. It's not like they're just
sitting there, you know?
right. It's not like they're just sitting in fucking teepees. Like they've got schools and they've got trade and they've got things going on. You know what I mean? So, but another thing that beyond, you know, hey, you could pay us for our land or you have to fucking relocate to Oklahoma. You know, they didn't even give every tribe that option.
Yeah.
That was only certain tribes that they were like, okay, you know what I mean? But like I said, that leaves a pretty shitty taste in the mouths of the Seminoles because they just signed a treaty 7 years ago. So the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Creeks, and the Seminoles basically refused to trade their land.
Well, yeah. Also, think about you know before really established like road structures and infrastructure in Florida. Fucking these guys are like, hey, you got to move the fuck out of here, and you just look around at all of the swamp, and you go, fucking come and take it, pal.
Part of the Second Seminole War is Osceola, who you're familiar with, living in this area of Florida.
He's very famous in this
Chief Osceola relocated everybody down to the Everglades instead of going to fucking Oklahoma. He said, we're going down there in the fucking swamps. And they killed thousands of American soldiers using largely guerrilla tactics, coming out of the fucking woods and murking motherfuckers and going back into the fucking swamps.
Yeah, I mean,
And
use your natural advantage, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
And so, like I said, obviously they had a bad taste in their mouth for this, like, you listen, get off of this land we just gave you 7 years ago, and you can, you know, we promise we'll give you some land out in Oklahoma. Like, what the fuck? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? So they were like, no, I'm good.
I think not.
Yeah, I'm not moving to fucking fucking Oklahoma out of this land that I've known my entire life.
It's hard to get a perspective on like the reality of situations like that,
right?
Because in my
you've
head,
got homes,
always,
you've got children, you've got schools, you've got representative governments, you've got trading and agriculture, you've got trading and other things, you've got all these things. You're not sitting around waiting for fucking Andrew Jackson's cracker ass to tell you where to go next.
Yeah, and you're rebuilding this after you were just moved 7 years
7 years ago.
And even if you're a native to the area, it's not that fucking easy moving all the way down Florida and fucking Swampville.
No,
like that's not an easy move.
No, the I-4 corridor was not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. So that's already
as
rough.
difficult as it is to think about that.
Yeah, and
it didn't
you're
exist.
fucking really trying to come back up and be like, okay, we'll do this. This is our life now. This is our history now. This is where we're going to build a new world. And they're like, we need you to fuck off again. It's like, no, I think you can suck our dicks. Like,
so that's just another example. Like I said earlier, we can't get bogged down in every treaty that the U.S. reneged on after making whatever sort of compromise with the Indians. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That one's a big one. So
I will say that the Seminole Wars, in my head at least, are some of the most dramatic fucking visuals like in the world. Just floundering white soldiers, like fucking mosquitoes and alligators and snakes, and like fuck, and then you just get fucking arrows in the neck, and like
it happened. Yeah, it all happened. So we are in 1830 proper with the Indian Relocation Act, and this is when we get to the wonderful Trail of Tears period of our history.
In 1830, Ecuador separated from Grand Colombia.
I don't care.
The Book of Mormon was published in New
Different
York.
Different episode.
And there's good context. The Book of Mormon first published 1830.
Yeah, and in a few years they're going to start immigrating west, and they're going to land in Utah and never leave. So I think we're actually going to hang it up at this point.
That's it.
So yeah, good luck not crying tonight, because we ended on just horrible misery and suffering.
I mean, in my head at least, I was thinking about fucking Seminoles murking motherfuckers in the swamp.
Yeah.
That's that shit.
But I mean, the reason why they had to do so is sort of tragic.
It fucking sucks real bad.
Tragic.
That's a bunch of bullshit.
By the way, just for reference on this 2-parter, maybe 3-parter, we have not even talked about the thing that everybody thinks about when they think of westward expansion, the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
We have not even...
It's funny as we didn't coordinate that. I just figured, yeah.
We have not even brought up the Oregon Trail. So there is like so much more to get into next week. And like I said, we'll see where the notes take us. This may end up being a 3-parter. I'd like to keep it a 2-parter.
I'm quite liking this.
I am too. I just like that and you know what? If you're a listener and like, I'm still waiting for the dam to bust open on like people contacting us and letting us know things, because really very few people have done so far. Yep. And I'm not saying this facetiously. I would really love to get more engagement from our listeners.
Except we did get a note from my friend Carrie saying that we should have Brian on more. Not the mailman, Velez.
Yeah.
I did not expect that.
Children's horror episode. We've gotten some feedback on some stuff, and we appreciate that. But like, I'd like to get a little bit more, and I'm not saying this facetiously at all. Like, I really, really, really would love to engage with the listeners more. If you guys feel like, 2 parts is good, or 2 parts is too much, or 3 parts is good, or 3 parts is too much, please let us know, because like
nobody told Kevin Costner when he made the epic 4-parter Horizon, and he only released 1, and then they shelved the second one, and he's not even going to do the 3rd and 4th.
Oh, jeez.
Because nobody told him, hey, Kevin, hang it up, man.
Truly heartbreaking. Also, no one told him when he made the movie Waterworld, which was 15 hours long and could have been 3.
One of the best movies ever.
Actually, could have been. It was. I think it actually was 3,
Dryland,
3.5.
Dryland is not a myth. Yeah. I've seen it.
But at any rate, we're definitely going to have a part 2. We may have a part 3. By the time we get engagement from people going, 3's too much or 3's perfect, we'll already be, 2 weeks out from actually having recording it. And maybe we can stagger the release, in my mind at least. So here's what I'm thinking. Uh-huh. Okay, so now we're talking to everybody, right? You guys are here. Riley's here. I'm here. We're on
the ground floor here,
baby. We're having a chit chat, right? In my mind, I like that we jump around from topic to topic, and we keep it kind of loose, and we keep it kind of, this one's serious, this one's fun, this one's serious, this one's fun. And so whenever you mention doing 2 episodes, doing a 2-parter back to back, which I know we had originally talked about when we first came up with this idea months ago.
It's exciting that way.
It is. And so there's a part of me that's like, well, we end one episode and people maybe are more inclined to tune in next week because I want to hear the exciting fucking climactic end to part 1. But I also, and I guess maybe some people are going to feel one way, but some people are going to feel the other way. I also wonder about the people who are like, well, I don't want to listen to fucking 4.5 hours of the goddamn West. Well, it is what it is.
Right now is the time to hype up the next thing. I mean, like saying like next week on Delete Everything, we're going to talk about this. Not to mention Kevin Costner's fantastic epic Horizon.
Jesus Christ!
Okay,
shut up.
First off, listen, this is serious.
Are you about to break down Kevin Costner's Horizon?
Lightly.
Oh, great.
Listen, Kevin Costner's Horizon, self-financed 4-part fucking epic series that is not being released at all.
What is it even about?
It's about
Is it about the West?
It's about a town in the West.
Whoa, crazy!
Right?
Kevin
But check it
Costner
out,
could have
check
never
it out.
guessed it.
No, understand though. Okay, the town is the topic, not just the people, but the fact that it started. So everybody moving around, bunch of different stories, right? There's even natives. Ooh, big. It's not a very good movie, but. After
You don't say. Is that why they shelved number 2 and he's not making 3 or 4?
Fucking bombed so hard, like epically, like made like $1 million on like a $500 million budget.
Kevin Costner needs to just get off the fucking West.
I
shit.
actually quite enjoy the movie, but I can watch anything.
He
whatever.
just needs to get off the West shit. Like you, like.
That's what he likes.
Okay.
Anyway, listen, this isn't the point. What
I'm
trying
sure
to say is-
every actor has things that they like more than other things, but you kind of you run the gamut. Hey, guess how you find new things that you like? Maybe Kevin Costner should do a fucking movie about
golfing,
the ancient
love of the
Sumerians.
game, or-
Maybe he should be an ancient Sumerian. We
Well,
put him in
you want him to pull a
blackface.
Gibson and do a fucking.
We put him in blackface. He's an ancient Sumerian.
Oof. No, but listen. Okay, so the movie, and I'm not exaggerating here. Essentially, from the first frame, it feels weird and off. Like because the editing is weird. There's like a couple of seconds on every cut that are like, why is it?
It's like I edited it.
It's just it's weird. Yeah, it's fucked up. It's fucked up. I like your editing, but
Thanks.
it made me uncomfortable right from the get go, and it's like almost fucking 3.5 hours long. But after 3.5 hours being like, this movie kind of sucks balls.
3.5 hours.
There's some really cool sequences.
I like Waterworld, and 3.5 hours is too
That's a
long.
lot. But like there's some really great sequences, some really cool epic Western shit, and it's essentially sucks a bunch of dicks. And then
I like our show in 2 hours, and
yeah, but listen,
whatever
this
it
is
is
what I'm
after
trying
2
to say.
hours is
If
too
you
long.
want to
Not
hype,
too long.
you
It's
want to
perfect.
hype people up for the next thing. Okay, the movie does this fucking brilliant thing where it transitions smoothly from like one dramatic thing that happens into what turns out to be a trailer for the next movie. It doesn't tell you what's happening. It's just the music swells through the one thing, and then you
I
start
just
getting,
had the biggest yawn. While
you start getting
telling
these
the story.
fast cuts from like person to person, and these things happening, and then it starts traveling like into the future, and you're like, oh shit, that's gonna happen. What's gonna? And you
Jesus.
think it's kind of doing like a time leapy thing to push you up to the next thing,
Yeah,
and then
no.
it just ends.
But
and
it's
just
actually
like
on
Horizon
the next
Part 2.
episode
Yeah.
of
But it's like
It's like when you're watching a show and at the end there's like,
But
on
it's
the
like
next
a
episode.
but it's like a 10-minute fast cut trailer, and it looks amazing. So when that
Ugh.
movie ended after 3.5
Gross.
hours of being like, I don't know, not for me. That last like 10 minutes when it ended, I was like, oh fuck, I want to see that.
stupid.
And I know that when you
Stupid.
take those
I hate
moments
it.
and you explode them out into full scenes, they're gonna be dog shit again. But
Right,
the
exactly.
trailer looked so fucking cool.
10-minute trailer looks rad. The 3.5 hour movie.
No, but here's the
ugh.
best part. The best part.
Okay,
Okay, and this will actually tie back to Delete Everything.
I hope so. I'm gonna delete this fucking movie.
But the last thing in this fast cut montage, like the big reveal, is a character that you hadn't seen before.
Sure.
And it's a guy in like a printing shop who's like leaning against a window. You only see his back, and it's like pushing in on him. And the printing shop is releasing these flyers for this town called Horizon that doesn't even exist for some reason. He's manipulating these people to come together in the West, right?
Oh,
and then
fuck.
it reveals the face, and it's our old friend, the dumb-faced asshole Giovanni Ribisi.
Oh my god, I'm yawning like crazy. I haven't yawned this whole episode. I've been so engaged, and now you're telling this story, and I'm yawning. I'm not even tired.
Well,
Maybe
fucking
I'm
cut it
tired.
then. All right, bye.
It's not how we end the show, even. Thank you
And then you
guys.
press in. You just cut it when I say dumb-faced asshole Giovanni Ribisi. That's it. Just fucking end it.
And then I don't say thank you, and the
Yeah,
5
just
stars
like
and all
Kevin
that stuff.
Costner.
Hey, guys, listen. Thank you for listening to this episode of Delete Everything Podcast. If you liked the show, please tap those 3 little dots on the top of your screen on Spotify and or what is it? Apple Podcast. That's the one. Tap those 3 stars. Leave us a 5-star rating. Give us a review. Tell us which one of our guests, if you're a frequent listener, tell us which one you like the most and who you want to have back. go ahead and send us a message on deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com. That's a good one. If you want to give us some show ideas, if you want to tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, that's a good way to get a hold of us. You can also follow us on Delete Everything Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Threads. We're on all three of those. I am looking at getting us on YouTube soon.
Yeah, let's do YouTube one.
Yeah, some people have been asking, and
We were going to
why
record
the
some
hell
of this
not?
and just kind of fucking technical difficulties.
I think I'm gonna release the audio only because there's YouTube music and people listen to podcasts on that. I did not know. I didn't know, and I've found out recently that people listen to podcasts on YouTube, and it's audio only format on the YouTube music. And so, and we can still do our idea where we want to sort of take some snippets of shows and release a video on, maybe a I don't know, 4 or 5 minute. If we hit a funny patch or a cool patch or whatever.
If we hit a funny, why not?
Yeah. So at any rate, those are the ways to contact us. If you want to support the show, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/deleteeverythingpodcast. That's the way to, throw us a couple bucks. You get some short episodes. We're going to be doing some Q&As. We're going to be doing some video stuff at some point. We just want to see sort of where the following goes and where the people go and what people like. So that's basically the show, and we'll be back next week with part 2 of Westward Expansion. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.